I am Alicia Lindsay. I teach 8th grade U.S. history in Littleton, Colorado.
And I'm Liz Burr, and I teach visual arts 4th through 8th grade at Bradford K-8 in Littleton, Colorado.
Yeah, I also work at Bradford K. Liz and I are colleagues.
We
And
are.
today we wanted to share with you the power of storytelling in the sense of how visual arts teachers and social studies educators can collaborate together to help students learn to tell stories both visually and through writing. So here's some background on the work that we did. About 3 or 4 years ago, our school decided to become a project-based learning school. And the first PBL I developed in U.S. history, 19th century U.S. history, I realized that one of the key foundations of that time period was finding our identity, and finding our identity came a lot in the form of artwork and literature and music. So one day in the hallway, I mentioned this to Liz, and she and I just kind of realized, oh, we should collaborate together and create a joint PBL. And over the past 3 years, we have worked to refine this PBL to help our students understand the power of visual literacy coupled with U.S. history as a means of helping them share stories. Liz, do you want to add to any of that?
I really think that encapsulates it. When we thought about this, we were thinking really, really big, and then we started to narrow it down, and that's kind of what the story is here for us too, is how we went from big to narrow to big again. So, yeah.
So we wanted to share with you this year. This is our 3rd year of working together. And as all of us know, after working together multiple times with people, things get better. And this year with our students, we have created these posters. Our goal with our students this year was that they would answer the question, what is my American story? We really recognized from the previous year's learning that one piece that was missing is students weren't connecting to how their story is part of the unfolding story of America. And so this year, we decided we needed to dive more into that. So what you see here is the end product that we are actually currently producing right now with our students, even remotely. It can be done remotely. And what our students did is, over the course of this year, they worked to refine their photography techniques. They also worked to refine how to write and how to write like a historian, and also work to understand how their stories are part of the unfolding story. And we asked them to really focus on 4 elements of themselves. We asked them to think about what is their individual journey that they are taking as a person right now, what are the places that are influential in their life, who are the people that have influenced their journey, and finally, what are the activities that make their American story. This next slide I'm going to show you also is one of our students who has just recently finished their work. We wanted to caveat that one of the kind of blessings that came out of this year is we had the opportunity to collaborate with an actual photographer. Now, we're not suggesting that you have to do that in order to make this work come alive, but it just kind of organically happened for us. So this was a kind of a 3-pronged project where I focused a lot on teaching U.S. history to students. Liz helped students understand how to read the visual arts elements, how to look at a painting, how to read a painting, how to make sense of paintings, and how paintings tell the story of the time period. And then the resident photographer that we connected with taught students how to use photography to tell stories.
So we had a huge, of course, as you know, when you think about the Constitutional Convention, westward expansion, Civil War, Reconstruction, you think about those as being very, very large, deep themes and ideas and histories. And how do you pull out all of the artwork that might be relevant? So we narrowed ourselves to 4 principal pieces. These are our anchoring paintings. So Howard Chandler Christie's Signing of the Constitution, John Gass' American Progress, Matthew Brady, Battle of Gettysburg, and really the Jacob Lawrence Migration series, but these we particularly love these paintings that we're looking at from his work. So we wanted to build visual literacy through painting and photography for the students with 4 anchoring paintings that anchor within each of the segments of our PBL. So we started with that, and then we moved on to thinking about how to create these parallel pieces. So we needed to create a way or a context for building our learning, and we wanted to teach these themes in context, but also side by side and weave them together. So this strategy of consistently blending these 2 disciplines, social studies history, visual arts making, those 2 disciplines, we put those 2 things together to help influence the students, to help weave that in their heads, and also to see how one influences another, and how they work together and they're not silos with each other.
So in order to do that, as Liz said, we had anchor paintings. It was really important to us that we also bring in this idea of storytelling. And so when we worked with our resident photographer, one of the key pieces that we talked about with him was to help him understand so that students would understand how to use these technology pieces that they have. How do you use digital media in a really responsible, informative way that communicates and connects with audiences? So when we worked with our resident photographer, we came up with 4 underlying goals that we wanted our students to understand how to see. So what we want you to know is that our students were primarily using their phones to capture pictures. Some of them had iPads, and some of them, as we went deeper into the work, they really learned that they love photography, and they actually acquired their own DSLR cameras. So, which was great because we started to see passion from the kids organically flowing into the work. So again, we wanted our students to understand, how do you see? How do you see through a camera, not just take a selfie and post it on Instagram or TikTok? Let's actually take and look through the lens of a camera and really see with depth. The second thing was use a camera to discover, not just use it again for selfie making, but to discover and see through a different point of view. Our resident photographer worked a lot with our students to build the language of photography, and that connected to the visual literacy strategies that Liz was also working to build with students. And then the final piece was that storytelling element. How do we help students understand how words and images can be combined to tell stories? So in order to get our students prepared for that work, as Liz mentioned, we had our anchor paintings, and every time we would move on to a new time period, we would anchor the work that we were doing in social studies with one painting. So you see here the Howard Christie Chandler piece of the signing of the Constitution. This was our anchor piece that we used to discuss the 3 questions that you see in the presentation. How is negative space used to convey to create an image? How do you suppose Christie determined who the audience was, and why do you say that? And how did Christie use empathy? So we used those 3 questions for every anchor piece. We changed maybe like the title and the wording so that it was connected directly to the actual painting, but we constantly were reiterating these words with students so that they were constantly thinking about the ideas of creation, negative space, and the ideas of empathy as a means to help them in their storytelling. Same thing here with the work that we see from John Gast. Again, you see how we repeated those 3 questions again with students, slightly tweaking it to make it fit with this painting, but we did that repeatedly to, again, stress with students that idea of storytelling in different ways.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And this enabled students to think about and combine an analog symbolism within these paintings. So they're not just passive observers of images. Just like Alicia said, when they're using their phone and they're taking that picture, we wanted them to become intentional about what they were observing and recording. And so using those symbols that we see in the paintings and in other images, we really wanted them to dig deep into what they were looking at and then what they wanted to communicate. So this is where we started. We started with visual literacy strategies, talking about opinion, your opinion matters, and sharing your opinion out with your colleagues, your classmates. We wanted that to be evident in their paintings and their photography. We didn't see that evidence until they started making stuff and started talking about it. So if you're like me and you're listening or watching this presentation, you're thinking, that's really cool, we love that, but did students really get it? And the answer is yes, and gradually. Gradually, they started to continue to loop back around to their own visual meanings to create their story.
So one of the key ways that we did that was we got them in the field. So we happened to have our school in a very nice open space setting. So we took our kids out into the open space and we just let them explore. So once they had learned the techniques and the vocabulary from our resident artists, coupled with the visual literacy strategies they've gained and US history, we took them out in the field to have them practice and apply. The whole goal initially was just practice, apply, learn. What do you see? How are you seeing differently? And what are you understanding about how to use your tool that you may not have understood before? And for our students, it was really eye-opening because they realized that a lot of them realized they loved the idea of macro photography. They loved getting in and just getting on the ground and looking at things in ways they had never seen. So it was a really good chance for them to expose themselves and apply these techniques in the field. One thing we wanted to share with you, this is a final product from one of our students. When we entered the westward expansion time period, we asked our students to explain westward expansion from their point of view. And we asked them to do that through a painting. So again, we were bringing in the idea of visual literacy, but then we gave them a little twist. We said, you have to create a painting, but you also have to take one or two of your photos that you've taken and deconstruct that photo and incorporate it into your painting. So as you can imagine, 8th grade students kind of went, what? When they first started this, it was dead silent in the classroom. And it was lots of thinking about how to deconstruct. And then gradually you heard the noise level gradually increasing as students figured out how to deconstruct a painting to make a painting. What you see here from our student is in the center, you see this is a dandelion. The student took a picture of a dandelion. They cut the dandelion out, and then you see all these different pathways. And the student was explaining that the dandelion was an example of how westward expansion occurred because it was dispersal. And all these pathways are different pathways in which westward expansion took and how it interacted not only with the land, but with the people. So you can imagine when Liz and I heard the student explaining that to us, we kind of went, and then we went, yes. So it was a really exciting moment for us to see that kids were putting the visual literacy strategies together, understanding how photography can be a means of storytelling, and boom.
And then adding in the postmodern approach to painting and photography, putting those two together. So yes, awesome. Yeah.
And then this kiddo here decided to take one element of their photography. They took this flag and put it on the wagon wheel heading west. But then this kid was really trying to interpret and explain how the movement westward was damaging to the landscape and to the people who are already there. So again, one small element of the photography, yet many layers of the visual literacy strategies being applied to share the story.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wonderful. So here we are with the beginning, which is really the end of what the students are working on. And this is another completed student's work. One of the things I think is really evident in this is that the students are, of course, are creating these photographs and doing their writing, but also it becomes a kind of artist book. So it's not folded or anything like that, but it really is a log of their story. And that circles back around to their understanding of what the greater story is. So, Alicia?
So that's all we have for you today. We hope that it inspires you to start doing storytelling and incorporating multiple disciplines into your work.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Okay.